Welcome to Postcards from Texas. I'm Mike Vance. This week we'll visit the town of Crosby. But first, the Astros might be a disappointment, but there was a time when guys were happy to be ball players and fans were beside themselves to get a brand new franchise.
God, for us, that was just amazing to have a major league baseball team in Houston, Texas.
It was so exciting and so validating.
It was almost like you're seeing before your eyes the passage of an era. And I remember thinking at the time, I won't ever be listening to baseball on the radio again. It's here. I'm seeing it live.
And the atmosphere was incredible. But this was a small town. Remember, it was not a major league city. There was only 500,000 people.
At that time, the Oilers were in their first year of existence. I can recall going to Jefferson Stadium at the invitation of Bud Adams. Bud was one of the original owners of the Houston baseball franchise, of the Colt 45s.
And we'd already gotten a taste of that with the creation of the American Football League and the Oilers coming in and winning the championship. But this was baseball.
To get the team, Houston had to prove itself worthy of the big leagues. The ownership group was optimistic and energetic.
St. Craig Cullinan and George Kirksey had sort of spearheaded the effort, and R.E. Bob Smith and Judge Roy Hoffheinz were the principal investors, and Judge Hoffheinz obviously became the principal figure as time went on.
But Judge would stay very active, and he had a lot of side owners too. When you look at George Kirksey and Craig Cullinan, all those fellows were very active with the players. It made us feel real comfortable.
He was the most creative person I've ever been around. He had great ideas, and he could put those in practice and get them going. I just don't know of anybody that could have realized the concept of building a dome where you could play baseball inside.
With the franchise slated to start play in 1962, some details remain to be worked out.
Obviously, there hadn't been much that had been done. There wasn't any ballpark. The judge had sold the National League owners on the concept of a dome stadium, and there were a lot of skeptics, of course, at that time. But the judge, even then, had working models of the dome, what it would look like.
Colt Stadium was thrown up in a hurry.
The dome was in the works, but that was still going to take time from a standpoint of the bond issues and the campaigning and the actual completion of the project. Basically, Senator Roy Hoffheinz and his staff put together a plan for a temporary stadium, which was put up in less than 6 months.
For something that was built in 90 days, could hold 30,000 people, was pretty good. The field itself was okay. And the good part, the wind was blowing out the left most of the time, and of course that helped right-hand hitters.
And the playing conditions, at least you can hit a ball out of that ballpark. The Astrodome, you need a bazooka to hit one out. It was so big.
It did have a Western theme and an air of excitement.
The staff was decked out in the Western motif, and the private club was called the Fast Draw Club.
They had those great costumes. Boy, everybody knew who they were and what they were going to be doing.
Somebody described it looked somewhat like a used car lot with all the banners and pennants and so on, but it was colorful.
They also needed players for the new Colt 45s.
And the club basically had to be assembled by what the other National League members wanted to give us, and there was a draft that both the Mets and the Colt 45s engaged in. We selected 23 players, but you didn't have a lot of choices.
With original GM Gabe Paul gone, Paul Richards from the Orioles became the man to oversee talent selection.
He was a gambler. He didn't mind taking a chance, and he did the same thing with Morgan, Durker, and Rusty. And the only mistake he probably made, there was a young kid here that was named Ernie Fazio that he gave a pretty big bonus to that didn't quite make it.
But he was really an astute baseball man. He knew the game from the pitching mound all the way behind the plate to anywhere, and he knew how to address those issues. And he surrounded himself with people that can take care of his shortcomings too, which is very important.
Part of the team was made up of National League veterans.
One lusty swinger the Colts are counting on is Hal Smith. The ex-Pirate backstop will long be remembered for his heroics in the 7th game of the 1960 World Series against the New York Yankees.
And Hal was the experienced one. He was, I would say 15 years older than us, and it was a big difference, so we had listened. He, along with Nellie Fox and some of the star players, that's what you needed to stabilize the young kids.
I remember Ramon Mejias, because back then we we couldn't afford to sit anywhere but out in right field, out in the outfield where all the mosquitoes were.
Pete Runnels, who was born and raised in the greater Houston area and had been an American League batting champion.
Eddie Casco was a great teacher. These are the guys that stabilized a young franchise. But they would spot things that would help a youngster. And then naturally you could take the teasing along with it.
We had some good players. Norm Larker played first base. He was a good player with the Dodgers. Turk Farrell would just come off a couple good years with Philadelphia.
He was a tough pitcher. He would pitch all the time. He gave you his best effort all the time. But he was fun to be around, and that's what he needed then.
There was also a large collection of talented young players.
And throughout here, and we were very, very aggressive as it stands in our recruitment of amateur players. Rusty Staub, who went on to have a very fine major league career. He was one of our signings in 1961.
Rusty was a great young kid. Very clean cut, easy to get along with. Joe Morgan was, you could tell real quick when Joe came in, and Jimmy Wynn was one also. Jimmy Wynn was there. And so I said something to Al, I said, you know, he's going to be a super baseball player one of these days. He's going to be taking somebody's position. Spanger said, well, you better look out because he's too good a ball player to play left field. He'll be taking your place in center field. Sure enough, he did.
Another youngster who already had some big league experience was Bob Aspromonte.
Relief pitcher Ed Roback finds number 14, Bob Aspromonte, tough in the clutch. Aspromonte, who formerly belonged to these same Dodgers, sends a satisfying poke well into the left field seats for a home run. Bob's on his way to his best year in the majors.
We were blessed having Bob Aspromonte here, who we all idolized and love and still do. And he was a great player, great person for the community of Houston, Texas.
Bob was a young, good-looking guy, had a very strong following from among the female fans, and played very well with us.
For the young guys, it presented a nice opportunity in a good town.
Carl Warwick is an outfielder purchased from the Cardinals in exchange for Bobby Shantz, and at this stage of the game, it's swinging one of the hottest bats in the senior circuit.
Got a notice that I was going to be traded to Houston, but see, I'm from Dallas. My wife's from Baytown, and we met at TCU. So it was kind of like coming home.
And being from New York, I really thought at first that the New York Mets would be something I would really like. And it turned out to where I became the #1 draft choice here.
Oh, the people were very good fans. In those days, you made friends with the fans and you talked to them and visited with them. Nowadays, you can't get to the players.
Leading that first Colt 45s team was Harry Kraft.
Harry was not forceful. He expected you, he gave you the opportunity to play. And he would correct you on certain things. He was a good teacher.
And I had a little temper, and every time I would do something, I would throw that helmet down and throw that helmet down. And so every time he stopped, I said, Bobby, I'm going to tell you, every time you throw that helmet, it's going to cost you $50. And I said, that's my salary. He's $50 every time. So he accumulated about 10 different throws. And then at the end of the year, he says, no, I'm not taking that money. You know that.
Up next, the team goes to spring training.